Welcome to 3ETV. I'm Chuck Callahan, your host for today. Margaret will be returning next week. I'm here today with Professor Yo, and we're going to discuss the Purdue Impact Program, which stands for Instruction Matters, Purdue Academic Course Transformation. So Professor Yo, tell us a little bit about you and what program you're in, and a little bit about you, and then we'll talk about your course.
Sure. Well, I've been at Purdue. This is my third year. I'm a clinical assistant professor in educational studies, and the course I teach is EDPS 235, Learning and Motivation, which is taken by every student in teacher ed at Purdue will take this. It's part of what was Block 2, but it's considered a foundational education course.
So how many students are in your course? What does that look like?
Okay. Well, it varies every semester, but typically, I think the smallest class I've had was 50 students, but then the largest was like 110. I usually teach 2 sections a semester, so it's about 250, 300 students a year on average.
And you teach it in 2 sections?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so you have 75, 80 students a section or so?
Yeah, that's fair to say. Yeah, that's typical.
Yeah, and you've been here 3 years.
Yeah.
So what do you want your students to be able to do when they get done with your course?
Oh gosh, I want them to be prepared to be effective teachers. So that means a variety of things. That means the title of the course is Learning and Motivation. So I think it's very one of the things that I really hope students take from the course. And I guess you asked what I want them to do. Probably it's less. Well, I want them to be effective. Teachers. So what that means is that they would come out of the course with a fundamental understanding of what it means to learn, have an understanding of what learning is, and also how to motivate students, or specifically how to structure their classrooms in ways that motivate students.
So I'd like to just kind of compare and contrast a little bit.
Sure.
You've been here 3 years, so you've taught this course for 3 years. Mm-hmm. You've taught the impact class just this last semester or last year?
Okay, good question. So yeah, I went through the impact program this past spring. So in the fall, I have 2 sections, and so one I've kept traditional.
Okay.
So I just kept doing what I was doing, making only minor changes as the result of having gone through impact. And then the other section was the redesigned as the result of going through impact. And I'm doing the same thing this semester too. So typically I've had 2 sections. One section tends to be students who are wanting to go into elementary education, and the other who are wanting to go into a content area in secondary education. And so last semester, those primarily interested in secondary education settings had the impact version of the course, and this semester we've flipped the flipped classroom so that it's the elementary ed students who are going through the impact.
So kind of compare and contrast for me the difference of how the 2 different, you got the treatment group or the, and the control group. What are those, how are they different? What ways are they the same? Compare and contrast.
Okay, well, they're different in many, many ways. So traditionally, the course has been taught in a large lecture hall. Just physical space was not very conducive to group work. You turn around to talk to your neighbor and you're at your neighbor's knees, right, because of the stadium style seating. And it was very much, the room is structured to attend everybody to the lecture or, me, rather than one another. So the actual space is a big part of it. With the impact rooms that we're in now, and I think we're in Hicks B2 something, 248, I believe. There are tables, so the focus is not on me at all. And when I do talk to students, it's at a variety of points in the room. But that's another difference too. So it's me talking to students. It's more in terms of structuring an activity, monitoring. Providing instructions, maybe a few prompts, whereas in the other section it's straight lecture. So the students get in the impact section, students get the lectures online. So I record those ahead of time. They're on Blackboard. They're usually 8 to 10 minutes in length, 7 to 10 minutes in length, and then students come to class prepared to engage in the activities.
So what kind of difference do you see between the sections?
In terms of the
Between the
students,
impact redesigned section and the traditional section?
like in terms
What
of
kind of difference do you see in the students, in their learning? What are you kind of experiencing?
Okay, so one of the things that I would hope students would get out of the class is, as I mentioned, an understanding of learning. So students tend to come into an ed psych class, a class on learning and motivation, with previous conceptions of what it means to learn, right? They've had 12 years of schooling, K through 12, and then 1 or 2 years of college, and they've come to see learning as simply memorization,
Yeah.
which has worked well for them,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this ability, these strategies associated with that belief that learning is memorization. And I think one of the things that we're able to do with impact is kind of challenge that conception quite a bit. So whereas a traditional course is about lecturing, memorizing the lecture notes to then sort of kind of, I hate to say regurgitate, but for a test every few weeks or maybe once or twice a semester. And then what happens? You forget the material a week later, right? Because you've crammed. It hasn't been meaningful learning, right? You haven't been able to make those connections to the field, to anything else. With impact, I think what we're seeing is that students actually are recognizing that conception of learning actually isn't working for them in this particular course. And yes, we absolutely do have tests, but we also have a variety of other assessments, one being like case studies. So students actually work through case studies that represent what they actually very well may encounter in the field. And so they are assessed on that. They have questions that actually are designed to get them to think in broader terms and not just simply spitting out concepts or definitions from concepts that they may have gotten from the lecture or the textbook, but actually see how those concepts play out in practice. One of the other components that actually both courses do share is this field experience or this practicum component. So students actually spend a couple hours, so this is one way the courses are similar. So students spend a couple hours a week for 8 weeks out of the course actually in the field. But with impact, we're actually able to make stronger connections between what's happening in the class and what's happening in the field. So both sections actually have assignments associated with those practicum experiences, but in impact, they can actually discuss those experiences. So, and the space actually makes that very conducive. So students actually work in small groups, and oftentimes they are asked to provide an example, okay, of this concept, how is that actually playing out in their field experience? What have they observed? How are they actually implementing that themselves?
So do you ever have students start out in, let's say, the impact class and wish they could go to the traditional, and students in the traditional wish they could go to the impact class?
Well, I don't have, well, I think you'll be visiting with a couple of my students later, so
Okay.
I don't even know that they were aware that there's another
Okay.
section, a lecture section, and vice versa. I mean, I do make references occasionally to the fact that, well, this is impact, we're collecting data, so there's survey data, and I say that with the lecture folks too. We're doing something a little different than the other class, but I don't really go to great lengths to, I guess, share what the other folks are doing. I think.
I thought they were talking among themselves, they might.
And I'm sure that happens. It doesn't make its way back to me, I guess. But
Well, you've done this
yeah.
one semester now. Have you been able to look at the data to see if there's any differences in the learning between the two different styles?
Yeah. So you mentioned data, so I'm glad you did that. So while I haven't gotten anecdotal feedback from students so much, it has been interesting looking at the data, and it's just preliminary at this point. There are differences in the section, so we feel like we need to collect data this semester as well before we can really draw any sort of conclusions. But one of the things that was interesting in the fall, I thought, was that students actually in the lecture section rated the class higher in terms of that they felt they were learning, that they felt the atmosphere was more conducive to learning. And I think what I take from that is that this is comfortable, right?
Yeah,
this is
right.
what I've been doing for 2 years, in college, and even more before college. And impacts, it's a little different. It's a little uncomfortable for students that aren't accustomed to it. And we try to provide quite a bit of structure so that the expectations are very clear. When students come into class, they know what tasks they should be doing. They know what's expected of them in terms of the quality of the work, but and yet it's still a little uncomfortable. A lot of students have had very negative experiences working in groups, especially I think our students here at Purdue, which I guess I'm a little bit biased, but we have Boilermakers in our classrooms, right? So I mean, they're good students, and typically when they work in small groups, they are, they tend to be the ones that kind of take it upon themselves to do the work, and so that gets associated with kind of a negative experience, feeling that sense of responsibility for everybody's learning. So it's kind of a negative experience and uncomfortable. However, in terms of learning, and again, I think we'll have a better picture when we get data in the spring, but even though the folks in the lecture class believe that they are learning more, they actually aren't learning anymore. In terms of like the test results that we've gotten, they're about the same, and indeed the students in the impact actually are doing a little bit better on certain areas on the tests.
Do you feel with the group work they perhaps are learning at a little deeper level?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So actually, just yesterday I had a conversation with members of the group, and they were working through a case study, and they were asking me questions about it. And well, is this happening? The student that's in the center of this case study, they seem to have had a high level of self-efficacy, and I was just feeding a couple questions to the groups to think about this or that, and simply as I was doing that, I just kind of popped that question in there as a little raindrop that they then use to go back and forth. Well, no, I see it. No, but did you consider this? And so there was a lot of back and forth going on that I felt is much more meaningful than listening to somebody tell you how to think about what's happening in the case, for sure. And one other thing I wanted to mention about learning outcomes. So even though the two courses are about the same, these are short-term outcomes that we're looking at.
Right.
So this is a class on learning and motivation. These are students that are going to go out into the classroom. So I think it's really important, and that's one of the reasons why I'm really excited about Impact, is that I feel with Impact we're able to actually model the content. We're actually able to model what good teaching practices are. We're able to actually model what it means to structure classrooms in a way that promote motivation. And so even though we're not necessarily testing on those, I suspect that those are benefits that we'll see long term. And I do hope to follow these students out into the field and see if it actually makes a difference in their teaching.
Well, we really appreciate you being an early adapter here and pioneering the way for hopefully improved learning here at Purdue. So I'd like to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. It's been a great pleasure.
So we'll have a break at this point, and we'll come back in the second segment and talk to a couple of Professor Yao's students and get the real scoop on his course.
Thanks.
嘿，朋友们，2014年中国有一期闰九月，一生难逢闰九月。
Ilan se vänder ut ungefär då, det som Sydafrika.
¿Sabías que Indiana es casi 5 veces más grande que El Salvador y tenemos 20 volcanes activos?
日本のトイレはすごい。
冬でも便座は暖かいし、
終わった後自動で洗ってくれるし、
音も出てすごい。
日本のトイレは世界で一番です。
Japanese toilets are automated and convenient, with remote controls just like for a TV or video game. Users have an amazing amount of control over their toilet, and it's all on this wireless control panel. It's super eco-friendly. This is a public toilet, and it has a unique feature. That's the sound of running water. Not only does it avoid embarrassment, it's relaxing to listen to.
Do you know that 420 different languages are spoken in the United States?
Welcome back to 3ETV, and we're with two of Professor Yo's students. We're here with Katie and Travis. So I'd like to talk to the two of you because you will give me the real story of this impact experience. So tell me a little bit about, first of all, tell me a little bit about yourselves, where you're from, and your majors, and the things that you're interested in, and then we'll talk about impact.
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay.
My name is Katie Redman. I'm from a small town east of Indianapolis called New Palestine. I'm actually a dual major. I'm a genetics major and biology education. I'm a senior at Purdue, actually, even though this is more like a sophomore level education class. Since I'm a dual major, it kind of gets all jumbled around. Other than that.
Yeah, and I'm Travis Olinsky. I'm originally from Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'm studying actually agricultural education.
Okay.
And so I'm interested in agriculture, and I want to teach our next generation of agriculturalists, and hopefully this impact experience will lead me that way.
Well, the impact redesign course, have you experienced a redesign course before? Is this the first one you've experienced, or?
Yeah, I took EDCI, I think it's EDCI, Education 270 last semester, which is a education with technology class, and it was an impact course. It was very similar to how this course is ran. You watch the lectures before the class, and then you go.
Yeah, I also took that class, and then this is, I guess, my second experience taking an impact course, and I found them to be very interesting and definitely different from what I've gone throughout my entire high school and beginning college career.
Well, just let me take you back to the first time you experienced an impact course. What did you think? What did you feel? Did you like it, or was it uncomfortable? What was that like for you?
I definitely think it depends on what professor is running it. There's a big difference between the 270 class I took and the 235 with Dr. Yo. There's a big difference. You can watch the lecture before, and if you just go to the course and you learn the same material, you won't go to class.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me in 270. I just stopped going to class and I got an A in the class.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like 235 has been a better experience for me overall. Our groups have been set so that we're with them every single day of the semester. And in 270, we kind of rotated through different groups, which kind of caused problems. And then working with groups within your section and a different section also caused problems because, first of all, you never met some of these students that you were working with, and having to do a group project with them it just didn't work out very well, sending emails and trying to meet up. And in 235, some of those problems are rectified, and it's just a lot easier, and you get to know your group mates, and it's a good time every time you go to class.
So talk a little bit about the ways you think the impact style of course, the pedagogy used with a redesigned course, how does that help your learning?
So I have a huge problem with reading comprehension. I have all my life. It's really hard for me to sit in a class where there's a professor talking, and then there's PowerPoint slides, and then there's a kid in the back talking. There's just too much going on. And I find when I can watch the lectures in my own time, I can watch them in my room, I can watch them in the living room, I can watch them wherever I want. I can be in my PJs. And then if something happens where I didn't catch it, I didn't understand it, I can stop the video. I can rewind and re-watch it. Or if there's something I want to write down, again, I can stop that video. Whereas in a class of 300, 400 students, you can't always stop the whole class to raise your hand because a lot of times professors won't even see you.
Yeah, and I find that the peer interaction is what sets it apart from other courses because, if you just watch the lecture online, you may understand it, but you may not have the understanding you need to have of it. And when you go to class, you work on maybe a case study or some other type of group activity, and just talking with your group mates, you can usually figure out the rest of what you didn't understand.
And we were talking a little bit off camera, Travis, you were talking about, and you really, I think, made a great point about covering the material and then coming to class. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's really beneficial that you can watch the lecture outside of class, and then when you come to class, Mike or Dr. Yo can really go into depth on that material, and I just feel like it's a good learning experience, something different from what we've ever had, and I enjoy it. It allows me to understand the material a lot better than if I would have just learned it in class and then gone outside to do homework.
Yeah, the way you explained it to me before, it really made sense in that you explained that you're able to cover the material and then review it in
Yes,
class. And
yeah.
that's a flip, that's a reversal of
Yes.
what normally happens in a class.
Yes, definitely.
So talk a little bit about group work. How have you enjoyed that, or have you not enjoyed group work? How's that worked out for you?
So like I said off camera, I absolutely hate group work. I hate it to death. I'm a very type A personality. Give me the homework, let me do it on my own, leave me alone. But in this class, Travis and I are actually in the same group.
Yep.
And we've become friends. Our whole group has over the semester. So going to class is fun. You get to go and see your friends, you get to talk to your friends, and if you just so happen to be talking about the material, then that's what you're talking about. And it really helps you, like Travis was saying, get to know your group, get to know how they work, so that way you can work better in that group. And also, like I said earlier, by doing the group work in class, if I have a question, I can just go, we can ask Mike or one of the TAs, they're all right there. It just makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, and I find that the group work in class is great because, you know, if you have another group project in another class, it's usually done outside of class. So being able to not have to worry about meeting up with your whole group makes it a lot easier.
Scheduling is probably a problem outside of class
Definitely.
versus inside class.
Exactly.
So what are the other aspects to the impact class have you found really helpful to you?
One thing for me, along with taking 235, we have a practicum experience where we go actually into classrooms around the area. And I go all the way to Clinton Central High School, which is a long drive, but it's been a really good experience for me to see what we've learned about every day in class in real life situations in the classroom. And we actually reflect on that every 2 weeks with a field journal, and we just write about our experiences and how it relates to what we've learned in class.
And then with those field journals, our TAs will actually give us feedback to make sure you're understanding the material correctly. So that way, if you're not, they can explain it to you and why you're not understanding it correctly. And like Travis was also saying with the field experiences, it actually puts you in a classroom, where a lot of my other classes have never actually put me in the setting of a career I wanted to do. If I wanted to do that, I had to go and seek it out on my own.
Yep.
And doesn't really relate to any of my classes. Like I said, with my genetics major, a lot of times I have to go out and find my own shadowings, and then I don't have anyone to talk to about it. So it doesn't really help me learn anything about what I just learned.
So Travis, it sounds like you want to go into an educational setting for sure. How do you see, or do you see yourself using this particular pedagogy or way of teaching and learning? Do you see yourself using it, or?
I think I would like to try it. I guess it would depend on which school I was at and if it was something that they were, receptive to. But I really think for student learning, this is the way to go. I've really enjoyed this experience, and I think if I end up being in the classroom, I definitely want to research whether I can continue this idea of a flipped or impact classroom.
So let's look at the flip side of the coin. What types of things have happened in an impact class that maybe you wish were different or felt uncomfortable with?
That's a hard question.
It doesn't have to be something bad. It's just something that...
I think maybe just the first day knowing that we were going to be put into groups. That was kind of uncomfortable. Yeah, and we didn't know any of our group mates at the time.
Okay.
And so that was a little nerve-wracking. And I guess overall, just some of the, every day we do something different, so you never know what's going to happen. But that's what also makes it a lot of fun, too.
So what was that like? You walked into the class the first day and they said, well, for some of you, this is going to be different. You've never experienced this or might not have experienced. What was that like?
Well, for me, I had experienced it kind of before, but like I said, the way Mike does it is completely different spin. So the way he put us into groups really...
Yeah.
I was very anxious, actually.
Agreed.
He put us in order. We had to form a line of teaching experience. I'm 22, and most of the other kids in the class are 18.
You just counted off, or what did you do?
I don't know. It was kind of cool actually in the long run. But we just ended up people who had been in classrooms more were in groups with people who were in classrooms less.
Yeah.
Which at first it was why are we doing this? But in the end it really helped. Because now I can share my experiences I've had in classrooms with, we have a girl in our group who's a freshman. She doesn't have a lot of experience in classrooms, so I can share that experience with her, and then she can share experiences with me too.
Exactly.
So what suggestions would you have for Professor Yo in the course? Is there anything you would like to see him do? Or?
He really does a great job.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely one of the classes.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
No.
You're fine.
I know. I enjoy coming to that class, and
I do too.
I have another education class directly after that, and I definitely can't say I enjoy it as much. And I think that just speaks to Professor Yo's ability to relate to his students. And I think the more one-on-one interaction he has with his students, the better that class can be. And it's already great, but I feel like the more one-on-one interaction, it can be even better.
And I think with that, you don't get that one-on-one interaction if it's not impact. I'm in the same class after that one as Travis's, and you do the lecture and then you do the group work, and it's just like our classes are only 15 minutes. There's not enough time, and then for the teacher to try to get to know you, that's not going to happen.
Yep.
So what's next after this for both of you?
Oh, well.
I have another year at Purdue since I'm that education major too. I have that full semester of student teaching. But I do want to teach. I want to teach biology after I graduate for a while. I don't know where though. Somewhere, hopefully Central Indy, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a sophomore here, so I have a couple more years left. So I'm still trying to debate, do I want to teach or do I want to go into agricultural industry? And that's just, I guess, going to be based on my student teaching experience and maybe some internships along the way.
Well, we certainly appreciate you coming in and, giving us your time and sharing with us about impact, because I think really the student perspective is, faculty can talk about it, but it really, the rubber hits the road where the students are. They're really the best source of information. So we'd like to thank you for joining us here today, and if you'd like to get more information on the Impact program, all you have to do is just do a Google search of Purdue CIE Impact, and it'll take you straight to the site that can give you pretty much all you need to know about who to contact and how to get more information on the Impact program. So until next time, have a great day.